This is Silent Stories Updates, where real stories speak louder than words. The morning the fish started floating to the surface, I knew something was wrong. My lake, the one I had spent 15 years protecting, was dying. The air had a strange metallic smell, and the water shimmered with a rainbow-like film across the surface. It was beautiful in the most horrifying way. My stomach turned as I watched another fish float belly up. That lake wasn't just a body of water to me. It was family. My father built our cabin beside it decades ago, teaching me to fish, to camp, to respect nature. When he passed away, I made a promise that I'd take care of it, no matter what. That promise was the last thing I ever said to him. And now it felt like I was failing. The Homeowners Association, or HOA, had been a thorn in my side for years, but this time, they went too far. It started when the HOA decided the lake looked unappealing. They said the reeds and patches of algae near the shoreline were unsightly, that it made the neighborhood look messy. To them, nature wasn't beautiful unless it was picture perfect. They wanted to fix it. At the community meeting, I stood up and said, "You can't just dump chemicals into a natural lake. It'll kill everything." Cheryl, the HOA president, crossed her arms and smiled in that way that made you feel like a child being scolded. "Tom, we've hired professionals. It's a standard cleaning treatment. You don't need to worry." I did worry. I worried enough to stay up that night thinking about it, but I never imagined they'd actually go through with it so fast. The next morning, I woke to the sound of machines outside. I stepped onto my porch and saw men in orange vests setting up pumps near the water. White barrels with bright warning labels sat in the grass. My heart sank. I ran down the slope toward them, shouting, "What are you putting in the lake?" One of the workers looked at me and said, "Just following orders from the HOA. Algae control." "Do you even know what's in that stuff?" I snapped. He shrugged. "Not my job to ask." I looked at the label. It wasn't algae control. It was a pesticide ban for residential use. I took pictures, video, anything I could. By the next day, the damage was visible. Fish floated near the shore. Frogs were gone. Even the ducks stopped coming. The water turned cloudy and still. My lake, my father's lake, was silent. The HOA sent out an email saying, "We're aware of temporary discoloration due to treatment. Please be patient as the lake clears." Patience. That word made my blood boil. How could I be patient while everything in the water was dying? I went down to the edge of the lake that night, alone. I knelt down and touched the water. It burned slightly against my skin. I could see the reflection of the moon, but it looked wrong, dull, sickly. My throat tightened as I whispered to myself, "Dad, I'm sorry." But grief turned to anger. I wasn't going to let this go. The next morning, I drove into town, collected water samples, and sent them to a lab for testing. I wanted proof. A week later, I got the results: dangerously high levels of chemical toxins, well above EPA safety limits. Armed with that report, I went to the next HOA meeting. Cheryl sat at the head of the table, sipping her coffee like nothing was wrong. I placed the papers in front of her. "You poisoned the lake," I said, my voice trembling. "Here's the proof." She looked down, skimmed the pages, and then smiled faintly. "Tom, this is unnecessary. We had authorization for routine treatment. This kind of alarmism helps no one. You killed everything in that lake," I said louder. "You think I'll just let that slide?" Her tone hardened. "If you continue to harass the board, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action." Legal action. That's what she called it. Me defending the only natural thing left in this overbuilt neighborhood. I walked out shaking, angry, and heartbroken. That night, I sat at my desk and filled out a formal complaint with the Environmental Protection Agency. I attached the photos, the lab results, the videos, even the email from the HOA. It took me hours. But when I hit send, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. 2 weeks later, I woke up to the sound of engines. Not lawnmowers, not trucks, black SUVs with EPA written on the sides. Agents stepped out wearing jackets with badges. I froze at the window. They were here. Word spread fast. By noon, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. The EPA agents went door to door, collecting statements, taking water samples. and asking for documentation. The HOA members tried to act calm, but I could see the fear in their faces. Cheryl came to my door that evening. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Tom, what have you done?" "What I had to," I said. "They're saying we could face fines, maybe even criminal charges. Do you have any idea what that means for us?" "For us," I said bitterly. "You mean for you? You did this?" Her perfect composure cracked. "It was supposed to be harmless. They told us." I cut her off. "You didn't care enough to check. You didn't care enough to listen." She didn't respond. She just turned and walked away, shoulders shaking. The EPA investigation lasted months. They confirmed the HOA had dumped illegal chemicals into the water without proper permits or testing. The HOA was fined heavily, and the treatment company lost its license. Cheryl resigned, and the rest of the board was forced to fund an environmental restoration of the lake. The process took over a year. Specialists cleaned the sediment, replanted the reeds, and restocked the fish. It wasn't the same lake yet, but slowly, life began to return. One morning, I stood by the water and saw a single frog perched on a rock, the first one since the disaster. I smiled for the first time in months. That tiny creature was proof that nature could heal, even after all we'd done to it. Some of my neighbors came by that evening. People who had once ignored me now stood beside me, looking guilty. One of them said, "We didn't know how bad it was, Tom. We should have spoken up." I nodded. "It's easy to trust people in power," I said. "Harder to question them. But sometimes, silence causes more damage than the act itself." They helped me plant new reeds by the shoreline that day. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting a lone dot as the months passed. The lake began to glow again. Ducks returned. The water cleared. I could finally see the reflection of the trees swaying above. One night, I sat by the shore as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky burned gold and red, and the lake shimmered with that same light. I thought of my father. How proud he'd be. I whispered, "I kept my promise, Dad." That was when I realized something important. This wasn't just about a lake or an HOA. It was about accountability. About standing up when something you love is under threat, even when people mock you or call you a troublemaker. Most of my life, I thought protecting something meant keeping it to yourself, staying quiet, and letting things be. But now I know, sometimes protecting means speaking up, even if your voice shakes. The HOA tried to bury their mistake under paperwork, under denial, under silence. But the truth, like water, always finds its way back to the surface. I still live by that lake today. On quiet mornings, when the mist rolls across the water, I can almost hear my father's voice in the wind. "Good work, son. You did right by the water." And maybe that's what life is really about, not perfection, not control, but respect. Respect for the things that can't speak for themselves. So the next time someone tells you to just let it go, remember my lake. Remember that silence is what lets injustice grow. And remember that one voice, one determined, ordinary person, can make even the most powerful freeze in their tracks. Because when I sent the EPA to their doorstep, it wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was me keeping a promise to my father, to the land, and to myself. This is Silent Stories Updates. Real stories, real people, real lessons.